Commercial property investors in Australia, this video is for you. Jack sent me a message. You know who you are, Jack. His question was, how does scaling work in building out a commercial property investment portfolio? So let's go ahead and talk about that. All right, so there's the active approach and there's the non-active approach. Okay, let's use me as an example to start out with. So I've purchased a 3.8 mil super cheap auto and a pet barn, right? And it's got a 5 and 7 year lease. So I know at the end of the 5 and 7 year lease, I've got about 40 grand worth of outgoings that I can put on the tenant when they sign the new lease, right? I'm starting out on a 6% net yield, and then I get 3% rental increases every year until the leases are up, plus I get the 40 grand uplift. Now I've done some modeling on the end valuation because everything is based on the rent for commercial. So if we start out at around 225 grand in net rental income, and then you get to the end of the 5 and 7 year period, it's going to be somewhere around 310 grand, somewhere around that with the rental increases. And then if you bump up the 40 grand, it'll be closer to 340 to 350 total. And then if we look at a 6 cap of that, then that's what our end value is. Now, without the 40 grand on top, after the 5 to 7 year period, the property is going to go from about 3.8 mil up to about 5.1. And then if I'm successful to get the rental income up and the outgoings on the tenant, so it's a triple net lease, then we go to the situation where it's going more towards a 6 mil total property, right? Now, also in the regional markets, you may not see rental increases like 3.5% to 4% or CPI linked leases where if inflation goes crazy, you're getting 5 and 10% bumps in your leases every kind of 12 months because inflation is going crazy. So that's a little bit of the trade-off in the regional versus the city markets, right? Industrial rents have gone through the roof in Perth and Brisbane over the last 4 years. So an active approach would be trying to find a property that's got a 1 or a 2 year lease, all right, and then doing something structurally to the property. So you might know that the rental income is very low, so you can tick it up to market and then revalue the property. So that would be one way. A second way would be to get a property where you know the lease is coming up, but you've already contacted the tenant and you know that they need some more lettable space. So you come in, put a mezzanine up for them, and then that increases your lettable space, and then your rental income goes up and so does your valuation. So that's more active approaches. My approach is more of a passive approach, where I don't want to do much in the first 1, 2, or 3 years. I just want buy, sit and forget and compound. So that's me. Now, let's talk about scaling. So because you have to upfront the costs with commercial before you do anything, so bank valuations and dealing with lenders and things, you have to know that you've got a huge buffer in what you're looking at to get to the next level. See, in residential, you can just go and order 5 to 10 desktop valuations. The banks pay for them. They all get done in one day. And then suddenly you know where the valuations are, and then you can authorize a refinance. And the costs with refinancing are very, very small. But the key thing is you know what the valuation cost and all the lender costs are, which are next to nothing. So you're much more willing to do that quick and fast. With commercial, you better know that you've got your comparable sales together. You've dealt with a sales agent in the local area. You've dealt with your property manager to understand what the value is in the area before you order the val, because you're going to have to upfront the costs with the val and everything to do with the lender before you know what the true end result is. So commercial is a lot chunkier. Okay, you're much more willing to let the property sit and do nothing until something has structurally changed, like a lease has come up, or you built a mezzanine, or you know in the next 18 months that the lease is coming up, or you know that the property is under rented, right? So that's the main difference. And then when those events happen and you know that the valuation has gone up, then that's when you're in a position to pull some equity and buy the next one. All right. Hopefully this has helped. This is a little bit more in the scaling side of things, but you also want to make sure that your first property does not blow up, right? Because commercial is the game that you play until you're 60, 70, and 80. So you're much more, when I look at commercial, I want to get my first property and the LVR down nice and low, especially if you're doing lease stock loans and loan reviews and valuation reviews and lease reviews, where even if you're running off 2 and 3 year leases, even if the lending changes and 3 rate rises go up, you're not going to get caught out with the lease renewal or with a lender review where they ask you to tip in some more cash. So your first property, you want to become a lot more bulletproof and then use that as a basis to launch into your number 2 and number 3, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm doing with mine. Right now, I think it's at about a 51% LVR, and I'll probably get it down to 40% LVR before I even look at buying my second or my third, because the bigger you get, the lower the LVRs are. So then you turn into a bit of a fortress where it doesn't matter if something happens with the tenant or the market or recession. You know, you're there and the LVR is low, or a valuation comes in short, or a lease has a problem, or a tenant has a problem. It doesn't matter because your LVR is nice and low and manageable and you're cash flowing heavy. So Jack, hopefully that answers your question a little bit with scaling. This is the game that you're going to be playing for 30, 40 and 50 years. So your goal is to not blow up in your first one. And Jack, I know you've got a number of different properties. So the way that you de-risk your first one is potentially when the lease comes up, if you don't have enough cash, if 1 or 2 of your properties has gone through a really good growth cycle on the resi side, you may very well just sell those properties coming up to the lease event. So then you can clear the debt anyway. That lowers your LVR, that de-risks yourself, and then that gets you into the second property as well. So that's another way to look at things, especially if you've got a larger portfolio. The more that you can reduce risk in commercial in the first 2 to 4 years that you hold, the better that you will do long term. All right, hopefully that one's helped you, Jack, and we'll see you on the next video. All right, bye.